That's the haunting part. That someone like you was in their life, and they blew it. Because now, no matter how many lies they tell themselves, they know you saw it. You felt the misalignment in their tone. You sensed the performance long before the curtain dropped. And, worst of all, you said nothing. You gave them rope, gave them time, gave them dignity, and they used it to tangle themselves deeper. Now, the shame is theirs. Not because you exposed them, but because you could have, and chose not to. There's a cruelty in your kindness now, one they can't reconcile. And you walk lighter, you breathe deeper, not because you wanted to see the worst in them, but because your sixth sense won't let you settle for false peace. You're not the kind of person who can unfeel what you felt. You don't forget frequencies. Once the energy shifts, once the deception sets in, it stains. And you don't need revenge. You don't need apology. You just need your clarity. That's your freedom. And those who underestimated it now carry the weight of every lie they once whispered in your presence, thinking you were just being quiet, not knowing your silence was the sound of the storm gathering. Now every room they walk into feels different, colder, sharper, not because you're there, but because your absence now carries weight, a presence that haunts, not with noise, but with knowing. They look at others and wonder, can they see it too? Do they know what I tried to hide? Because once you've been seen by someone who doesn't need to be told, shame becomes a second skin. It wraps around their ego, suffocating the pride that once let them lie so easily. They used to enjoy the spotlight of your attention, oblivious to the fact that you were never watching to admire them. You were watching to understand. And now, that understanding follows them like a shadow they can't shake. Because they didn't just underestimate your sixth sense, they provoked it. You don't brag. You don't boast. That's what makes your awareness so dangerous. They can't predict you. You don't give away your tells. Your strength isn't in how you speak. It's in what you never say. You knew the truth long before it unraveled. But instead of demanding an apology, you let them dig. Let them show their hand. Let them perform until the illusion collapsed under its own weight. And now they look back, wide-eyed, stunned by their own recklessness. The fool who mocked the storm because it hadn't struck yet. The manipulator who lied with confidence because they never imagined the person across from them could smell smoke before the match was even lit. They see glimpses of your intuition in their dreams now. They replay your stare, the calm one, the one that didn't argue, but saw. And they wonder if every conversation was a test, if every smile was layered, if every kind gesture was bait for the truth. And the truth is, it wasn't. You weren't playing games. You were just aware, hyper-aware, not from superiority, but from survival. You learned long ago that words lie, but energy doesn't. And while they flexed in language, you observed in frequency. You listened for the silence behind their voice. And when it grew loud enough, you didn't react. You left. They'll spend the rest of their story pretending it didn't matter. They'll call it overthinking, intuition turned delusion. But that's just the defense of someone who got caught in the web they wove for someone else. They can't unsee your awareness. They can't undo the fact that they were studied and that their deepest fear came true. Someone finally saw behind the curtain and stayed silent. That's the burn. Not being exposed to others, but being exposed to you. And knowing you're out there still, walking free, walking clearer, unburdened, carrying the truth like a crown they'll never touch again. And you? You don't need a stage. You don't need closure. You don't need to prove that your sixth sense was right all along. The burn of knowing is enough. The silence you left behind now speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. You were never meant to convince them. You were meant to see. And now they live with the echo of that seeing. A relentless reminder that some people, no matter how good they are at hiding, can never fool the one who feels truth before it's spoken. You weren't the one who got played. You were the one who watched them play themselves. And now, you've moved on. But they never will. They'll wear masks more carefully now. Speak slower. Choose their words with surgical precision when they meet new people. Because of you. Not out of growth, but out of fear. You've altered their blueprint. They now understand that not every quiet presence is ignorant. Not every forgiving soul is blind. Somewhere in the back of their mind, you live as a cautionary tale. A memory of the one they couldn't deceive. The one who didn't shout, didn't chase, didn't beg, but saw everything and simply walked away. They believed you only listened with your ears. They thought they could speak in half-truths and fragmented scripts without consequence. They thought your eyes were just for show, that your silence was naivete. But they never knew the kind of mind they were dealing with. The kind of soul that doesn't just listen, it absorbs. You didn't need to be told. You didn't need confession. Your sixth sense was the courtroom. Their energy was the evidence. And you were the verdict long before the sentence was ever spoken. They underestimated you because they were trained to recognize intelligence only when it shouts. But yours whispered, curled in shadow, waiting. And when it moved, it didn't ask for attention. It demanded reckoning. You see what they don't say. You feel what they try to bury. Your gift is not mystical. It's forensic. You study the weight behind their words. You catalog contradictions in silence. Their pauses speak louder than their apologies. Their eagerness to be seen, the desperation in their rehearsed empathy, their overused narratives. None of it escaped you. Your intuition isn't noise. It's a scalpel. Sharp, clean, merciless in its precision. They told you who they were before they knew it themselves. And you never flinched. Because you don't fear darkness. You translate it. You grew up walking through rooms where truth wore costumes. So when they stepped in wearing masks, you weren't surprised. You were prepared. They couldn't lie to you properly because they didn't study the mechanics of your silence. They underestimated how deeply you remembered. They didn't realize your nervous system was wired to detect patterns before they formed. They didn't know that while they were painting red flags white, you were filing them alphabetically. You read their tone the way most people read headlines. Fast, instinctively, and without effort. And when you smiled at them while they lied, it wasn't because you believed them. It was because you were giving them the grace of not collapsing their illusion too early. That's what they mistook as ignorance. But what they thought was softness, was strategy. They assumed your kindness meant you hadn't seen the betrayal coming. They never considered the possibility that you saw it before they even plotted it. They mistook your forgiveness as forgetting, when really, it was a pause, a chance for them to self-correct. They didn't realize how often you choose not to confront, not because you can't, but because confrontation is exhausting when the truth is already self-evident. And you, being wired to feel before you speak, were already miles ahead in understanding the motives they barely had time to hide. Their whispers echoed like thunder in your bones. You weren't watching them fall apart. You were watching them reveal themselves, frame by frame, word by word. They fear you now, but they don't show it. They dress it up as indifference. They tell themselves, you were just overthinking. That's the armor of those who fear being seen too deeply. But underneath their deflection is panic. Because once you've been seen by someone like you, there's no going back to pretending. They remember the calm in your eyes, the way your expression didn't change when their lies did. They remember the subtle shift in your energy, the one that meant you'd stopped believing, but hadn't stopped watching. And now, that memory owns a corner of their mind. Because it's not that you knew everything. It's that you knew enough. Enough to walk away. Enough to stop explaining. Enough to let the truth speak in your absence. You never needed to be loud to be dangerous. That's what they failed to understand. You don't use words as weapons unless absolutely necessary. Your weapon is awareness, and it cuts cleaner. While they laughed and talked and over-explained, you were taking note of every contradiction, every flicker in the voice, every misplaced affection. They were crafting narratives. You were decoding them. You didn't guess. You sensed. Not because you're magical, but because your trauma taught you how to read the room before others even realized there was a script. Your sixth sense wasn't born out of whimsy. It was forged in fire. And now that it's sharp, they wish they had never tested it. They thought you'd stay. Thought your love would blind you long enough for them to keep dancing in the dark. But the thing about people with your kind of awareness, you don't leave out of anger. You leave out of knowing. Knowing that nothing you say will change someone committed to deception. Knowing that you deserve to breathe in places where truth doesn't suffocate. So you pulled away. Not with drama, but with precision. You didn't make a scene. You made a decision. And now, they're stuck reliving every moment, every slip, every detail they thought they covered, wondering just how much you saw, wondering if they were ever truly hidden at all.